The lights went out in Wicker Street with no exit. The lights went out in Wicker Street the night Evelyn had vowed to leave. She had been back only for an evening, folding through the same iron gate, keys muffled in her pocket like an accusation. The street lamp at the corner shivered and blinked until its flame died, and then every window yielded the same small, absolute darkness. No sirens, no phones. For a moment, she simply stood in the imbalance, her breath, the cool brick under her palms, and the sudden, sharp awareness that absence could be a presence. First, neighbors appeared like thoughts. A silhouette at a curtain, a shutter dragged halfway closed, a dog sound somewhere inland, and then cut. Evelyn moved along the path out of instinct, tallying the familiar features as if they were a list she could check off and be reassured. The brick facades leaned close enough to breathe. She noticed the sound of the lamp, more a low, electrical hum than air that seemed to press at the bones of the houses, as if the street itself were tuning to a frequency beyond her hearing. Halfway down the block, she found the first notice pinned to a door-yellowed paper, typed in plain, even lines. The message was not welcoming nor forbidding. It was a measurement, a time, and an instruction about remaining still. Evelyn read it twice, then folded it inward with practiced control before she realized her fingers trembled. The same sheet waited at 3 more doors, each placed at eye level, as if someone had arranged for them to meet her glance. The sameness was the thing that unmoored her. Someone had not merely written, they had anticipated. No one answered when she knocked. Behind one door, there was the faint rattle of someone moving plates, a whisper of water in a sink, and then those sounds cut like thread. The silence that followed was not empty, it had weight. Evelyn's own name felt too loud, an internal bell flaring in the hush. She tried to call out to a neighbor, listened for footsteps. Only the hum of the lamp and a deeper vibration in the ground that felt oddly like breathing, slow, centralized, and patient as a tide approaching shore. She passed Mrs. Larkin's window and froze at the familiar stick of knitting. The old woman peered out, an outline of eyes and bone. Evelyn thought, for a beat, that relief would come in that small human face. Mrs. Larkin raised a finger, slow and deliberate, and then withdrew it, as if reconsidering even that motion. Her mouth moved without sound, her hands stilled. It looked like a pause taken to remember a memory. In the glass, Evelyn caught the reflection of the brass key in her palm, and beneath it, a darker pool that might have been her own surprise. She tried other doors. A neighbor's television glow blinked and then sank. The hum thickened. As she moved, the street seemed to elongate the distance between lamppost and doorstep, stretching by the breadth of a single breath. Evelyn tested her gait, counting steps like a child crossing a road, hoping the rhythm would anchor something. Instead, the marks between places blurred. A doorknob she knew well felt cooler, and further away each time she looked at it. Familiarity itself had been quietly hollowed. When she stopped near a stoop, the brass key warmed as if by its own light. It was a small, almost comic comfort metal that answered touch, but it was enough to make her pause and listen. From somewhere further down the row came a sound like paper being sorted, a sliding of edges, the same sound she had heard when she folded the notices. Evelyn looked until her eyes ached and began to suspect the street had a memory. an inventory that it ran through when asked. Each notice might be a line in that ledger, each absence a check. She found, in an alley, a child's abandoned scooter leaning against a wall, as if placed with care. There was no child, of course, no one she could see, and so the scooter functioned as a small accusation, an object pointing to the human world that had retreated. Evelyn imagined small footsteps, a trajectory, then no footsteps. The street felt curated. Every item was arranged to give the impression of continuity, while omitting the living parts that made continuity true. She felt watched in the way one notices being observed by a camera that does not blink. She kept moving because not moving, standing, and listening produced a different terror, a slow, invasive quiet that pressed like damp onto clothes. Past a corner, 2 doors away, a clock in a window had stopped at 11:03. Evelyn realized that time here was not a steady river, but a set of paused frames, chosen and kept. She tried to be rational gaslights, a neighborhood outage. Yet every rational explanation dissolved when she peered into windows and saw the careful absence where people should have been. A voice finally reached her, not from a throat, but from the stone itself, a whispering that needed no mouth. It catalogued names, or perhaps sounds like names, and it was not unkind. Evelyn could not place its language, half phrases that skimmed the edge of recollection. The voice suggested doors and times and positions with the tender precision of an archivist. She answered sometimes without meaning to, mouthing yeses and nos that felt ceremonial. The street wanted order. Order required her cooperation, however small. The notices multiplied. They appeared not only on doors, but tucked under railings and slipped between stones. Some had been there only moments when she turned, then vanished when she looked too long. Evelyn tested her reasoning. Perhaps she had failed to notice them earlier. Perhaps her absence had made them visible. But each new paper read like the last. Steady type, small margins, unnamed signature. The sameness was its own language, and reading it felt like complying with a riddle whose answer she did not yet possess. At the far end of the block, the air grew colder. Evelyn's breath became visible, a stitch of white against the dark. She found a doorway slightly ajar, and inside a shallow corridor that led to a mirror whose surface was veiled and then not. In the mirror, she expected her own reflection worn, insistent, but instead saw the faint suggestion of another corridor, a house opening inward instead of outward. For a moment, she felt 2 rooms inside her skull, one remembering the street and one beginning to unmake it. She touched the mirror glass, and the surface gave like skin under a pulse. The brass key in her pocket thrummed in answer, and she understood, in a way that bypassed speech, that the street would accept her if she aligned with whatever bookkeeping it kept. Evelyn did not know how to perform that alignment. There was an arithmetic of stillness, a scale of acceptance measured by how little one resisted. To stay was to be catalogued. To leave was to risk being left as a notation. Present, then annotated, then folded and put away. When the lamps returned, they did so like a decision. One by one, thin flames reasserting themselves along the row. Light unfurled into windows, revealing rooms arranged as if nothing had happened, cups in their usual places, chairs angled as they always had been. But the street had been changed in the intervals. A house she had known now had a different number on the door. A photograph on a mantel showed a face she did not recognize, but that smiled like a memory. The notices were gone as if consumed, and Evelyn felt both relief and a new, more private unease. She turned to leave and found the brass key cold again in her palm, and a small dent in the coin of metal she had not noticed before, as if someone had made their mark. When she glanced back, Mrs. Larkin's window was dark, curtains closed, and the knitting lay abandoned on the sill. Evelyn walked away from Wicker Street with the peculiar sensation of being both dismissed and preserved. An object returned to its shelf, but annotated with the shape of something that had looked closely. Later, at her small apartment, she set the key on the table and found, tucked underneath it, a scrap of the same yellowed paper. It bore only one sentence in plain type: "Staying is a way of being counted." Evelyn did not know if the paper had followed her or if she had not seen it earlier. She sat for a long time, the city around her ordinary and loud in the way cities are when they have not been catalogued. The sentence could be comfort or cage. She smoothed the scrap and left it where it could be read again, like a question she had not yet learned to answer.